Hi, and thank you for joining us right here this week in video marketing. I'm Todd Hartley, and the power of video as a marketing tool is absolutely phenomenal. Think about this for a moment. When you use video inside of your search strategy, you get phenomenal search results. The best web traffic generation comes from a video campaign. Social engagement, email click-through rates, sales conversions, retention upstairs, all of those are guided by the power of video marketing. Streaming Media West is coming up. 2014 will be in Huntington Beach, 18th and 19th of November. I'm going to be there. I'll be reporting live each day. I hope to see you on location. And if you're looking for a great source of information, I think Real SEO is the best video marketing news site on the planet, and I read it every day. It's part of my my industry addiction, right? And trying to be the best in my industry is learning what's happening in video marketing, and the thought leaders that are on Real SEO are very, very impressive. And that's why one of my favorite contributors, Greg Jarbo, president and co-founder of SEO PR, is with me. Hi, Greg.
Hi, Todd.
Greg, a real honor to get to spend some time with you. Thank you for doing this.
Gee, I should be charging you then.
Right on. We'll have to do that. We can use Apple Pay or whatever your form of payment is fine. Is it Square? But we'll take care of that after the interview, okay?
Okay, drinks and a conference generally are sufficient.
Okay, cool. We'll take care of that. All right, so a great article that you wrote on realseo.com about Adobe and Nielsen collaborating to create the industry's first comprehensive cross-platform system for measuring online TV, video, and other digital content across multiple web locations and apps. Can you give me the big picture about this? Because I think you explained it beautifully, and I think the audience needs to hear it directly from you.
Well, let's put it this way. What they have accomplished together is interesting, and it was going to be useful. And you know what? I probably shouldn't poke so much fun at it. But it's one-dimensional. What it does is it's going to measure reach. And the assumption is if only we can measure reach across all these devices, life will be just wonderful. But riddle me this. If you were a riverboat pilot back in Mark Twain's era, and all you knew was the width of the Mississippi River, how useful is that information? Well, it's useful. But guess what? You also want to know the depth so you don't, hit a sandbar. You certainly want to know the speed of the current. You want to know what the draft of your steamboat is. That's why they kept throwing the lead over the side and letting them know if they had reached Mark Twain, which meant it was safe. You could get up and down that river without hitting something. So there are more dimensions than just reach. There are more dimensions than just the width of the river. You want to know its depth, you want to know its length, you want to know the currents going upstream, downstream, you got it.
Now, all that makes sense to me as a video marketer, right? You want reach, you want relevance, you want resonance. You want to make sure that that message is resonating with your target audience. Where does something like this Nielsen Adobe partnership fall short?
Well, what they're doing is they're trying to squish online video down into a television metric. Okay, now we can finally compare the evening viewers of a primetime show or a cable TV show to the number of eyeballs I've collected across this digital video campaign. And the answer is, well, that's nice, and that's actually a useful metric, but that's one. Were they relevant viewers, or are they just random viewers? And beyond the relevance is, after they watched your video, did they decide to share it with their friends? Did they rush off and buy the product? I mean, what happened next? And those, to me, are the metrics that they're missing. And again, I don't mean to poke fun at them, but it's like if you've got a one-dimensional tool, then surprise, surprise, every problem looks like a nail because I got a hammer.
It's a great example of people not in the industry trying to come up with a one-size-fits-all solution to a problem, and they're really traditional media people trying to apply traditional solutions to new media challenges. When I was a talk show host, it was easy for me to see that these traditional analytics like Arbitron or Nielsen were totally ill-prepared to grasp the real size of an audience, the engagement, the reach, and the resonance, like you explained. How do you see this playing out?
Well, again, one step forward. I was just trying to let everybody know that there are 2 more steps to go. And, fine, terrific. This will be useful to know the reach. But come on, guys, online video has more potential than just how many eyeballs do we collect this week. And if you think about that, then you begin measuring on other dimensions, and those other dimensions actually turn out to be more powerful.
Okay, so a great example of the other dimensions. One of my favorite is time on page. Time on page, the video equivalent, right, would be time on video. But the number 1 and number 2 search engines, Google and YouTube, use time on page as a primary ranking factor, and so too does the number 1 and number 2 social networks, YouTube and Facebook. And something like this Nielsen Arbitron analytic package seems totally ill-prepared to manage the most important stat, time on page. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and YouTube rolled out what they called watch time almost 2 years ago now. Totally changed their algorithm. We've been working with the YouTube algorithm since about 2006, and the addition of watch time, which replaced views in their algorithm, all of a sudden meant that if you got 5 seconds, that used to be a view. Now it's like, oh my Lord, I got a 3-minute video and they only watch 2 minutes. Wait, time out. Is that going to be held against me? And what that meant is that now there was a whole qualitative measure. Did you engage your audience long enough for them to watch more than half, more than 3/4, all the way through to the end of your video? And one of the interesting things that you see is the videos that actually do the best in YouTube search results often are music videos. Why? Nobody bails out before the end of the song. So they're there. And there are some marketers who are starting to take advantage of that. The whole phenomena that we saw this summer around the World Cup, Activa, hooked up with Shakira to create a music video / it was a product plug for yogurt. And by the way, the yogurt video kicked butt, and the people it beat out include Nike and Adidas, a lot of people who, quote, have been to World Cups before and should have known better. Well, they had their lunch eaten by somebody who had actually tapped into this phenomena and realized that if I have something that will keep people engaged in that video, even if it's nothing more than a soundtrack, and it was a great soundtrack, by the way, then guess what? I've increased my watch time, I'm going to rank better, and oh, by the way, ranking better is a great way to get more views.
Yeah, when we're working on a campaign with a client, we start off with strategy, which is, we've got a full strategy team that advises our video creators in-house. We're generally looking for a map or a strategy that's similar to what you explained. How do we create something that is highly relevant, that resonates with our audience, that pulls them all the way through to the end, because that will then end up providing not only a content that our audience will recognize as valuable all the way through, but something that they're likely to share because the end point is going to be so engaging, so exciting that they're going to want to push it on to other people, and that'll ultimately end up spreading their influence.
Yep, and sometimes the technique is to tell a good story. Nobody wants to bail out of the middle of a good story. Another one, and this is really sort of fascinating, are how-to videos. If you're trying to learn something, you don't quit partway through. You want to see how the process is done so that you can do it successfully yourself. So there are more than one genre that can tap into this phenomena and increase your watch time. It's not a one-size-fits-all or silver bullet kind of thing. But nevertheless, thinking about that dimension goes way beyond thinking about just reach, which is how we started this.
Right, and unfortunately, that's where a lot of people in video creation are. Exactly where Arbitron is, exactly where Adobe is. I'm at Nielsen instead of Arbitron, excuse me, is on views and not on quality, not on time, and not on those other elements we discussed. You know, Greg and I speak at conferences around the country. You know, I'm speaking on topics like where's Google going? That happens to be one of my favorite topics. Or how to dominate your industry and become profitable using video. And so one of the things that I'm commonly talking about is where Google's going, and because Google's audience, its audience in search is 50% on mobile devices. You know, now Google's designing its algorithm around search, and so it wasn't a surprise for me to see Carla Marshall's article in Real SEO, which is titled "It's Official: 50% of YouTube traffic now comes from mobile." It's a really interesting article because it's showing you that YouTube is hitting the same audience point with their devices as Google is, and that's a sea change moment. Greg, what should people know about that?
Well, the first thing you need to know is that it snuck up on both Google and YouTube. They were blown away by the speed that this transition happened. Let's just share a few numbers to put them in perspective. In 2011, 3 years ago, 6% of the views on YouTube were coming from mobile. In 2012, a year later, okay, that was 25%. Last year, 2013, it was 40%. Now it is 50%. So all of a sudden, the world shifted off of viewing video on desktops to increasingly, it's 50% today. I got to believe that going forward, if you do not have a mobile-first strategy, your video is going to be sort of designed for the last audience. And that's almost as bad as designing stuff that's supposed to work as a 30-second spot on television and then trying to lamely repurpose it as a YouTube video. Well, guess what? If you're designing for desktop and hoping that it sort of gets by on the smartphone or the tablet, you know, you really are designing for the wrong platform.
And so, you know, I come from a traditional media background and left in 2007 to get into the digital space, and it's really interesting how a lot of the talent in our space is from traditional media, but campaigns operate differently. So YouTube CEO Susan Wojcicki confirmed that traffic from mobile devices now risen to 50%. And this isn't a fluke. Google has seen similar trends. It's not backing away. It's not going to be next year 40%, because more and more of us are engaging on our devices, and we're going to be as mobilely engaged even more in the future. So that to me really says start planning your content, like Greg said, mobile first. Be conscious of how people navigate through your site through a mobile device, because the speed of the load, the speed of access to information will also determine Google search and people's access to your videos. And let's face it, on a device like this, you go and read, like when I'm laying in bed in the morning, if I grab this first, Greg, and I start reading on it, it's such a cumbersome way to read. People on mobile devices would much rather watch video. It's an easier way to get that information. So creating your mobile first platform is really the right way to be focused. Do you agree with all that?
I do. And one of the other things that happens after they've finished watching the video, on the mobile device, on my Android, for example, I have fewer sharing options than I do on desktop. So on desktop, I've got a slew of them, including LinkedIn and Pinterest, and you know, the places that I can share video. There's about 8, 9, or 10 of them now. On the mobile device, you got Facebook, you got Twitter, and you got Google+, and then you punt.
Right.
So all of a sudden, what that means is you need to sort of focus the sharing. After people have watched the video, what do they do next? You've got to sort of focus your next step in your ongoing marketing effort to making sure that they share it on one of those 3 social platforms.
So Greg, can we talk about how this trend's going to impact business and content creation, maybe audience engagement and sales conversion? It seems like the YouTube announcement of 50% of their audience is mobile goes back to the same discussion we had a moment ago: reach, relevance, and resonance, doesn't it?
It does. It absolutely does. And now you have what I'm going to call a 4th factor, okay? And that could be location. Because where people are using their mobile devices, they may be standing in your store looking at the item on your shelf, and they're doing, showrooming. Okay, this is interesting. Can I find it somewhere else? How does it work? What do the reviews look like? And all of a sudden, that is a very, very different kind of call to action and potential business, opportunity than, oh yeah, I'm at my desktop, I'm looking at some stuff, and maybe tomorrow, possibly, if I'm in that neighborhood, I might drop by that store and buy something. So it has huge impacts if location is also factored in to those first 3, reach and relevance and resonance.
Yeah, it's a good point, man. I'm interested in, I'm really interested in how our clients use video as a secret weapon to drive their primary objectives of generating more revenue, of developing deeper thought leadership. We put out we were going to a conference, and we do a lot of conference work for our clients, and we knew that there were 48 people that were going to be at that conference. We put out a HubSpot campaign on those 48 people using video, and it turned into 2 meetings at the conference, and those 2 meetings turned into 2 new contracts worth $200,000 in new revenue to the company. And that's because of the way that people look at video and how video helps you sell and convert. And so for me, when I sat down with these new potential leads, because they already had seen our video, they already saw our quality of work, they'd already started vetting their vendor upon their first opening of an email and looking at the videos. By the time we sat down with the new prospects, they were further along in the sales process than any client I've ever experienced before. They were talking about next steps and paperwork and when does the first payment need to be in.
Yeah.
And that's a game changer.
It is huge. But what it also underscores is that video is also a B2B opportunity, not just a B2C play, because everything you're talking about there is traditional B2B marketing. Now, we've used video in a number of situations. One with a medical devices firm up in the state of Washington called Sonosite, and one of the advantages that they had with their mobile video is that it actually accelerated the sales process. Because normally you don't sell in a B2B situation to an individual, you're selling to a committee. And if somebody can see something and immediately share it to their colleagues, who can then say, okay, I wasn't in the meeting where that demo was actually done, but I got to see what they were talking about, all of a sudden, the sales cycle was shorter. We also have used another technique with a different client in the education space. And they were trying to build relationships with university presidents, which is, a tough group to, get a sales call with, let alone actually make the sale. Well, what we did was we found the industry conferences that they were attending. And then we contacted them and said, we'd like to interview you at the conference because we see you're a speaker and we'd like to talk to you about what you were addressing at the conference. And we ended up building relationships for this client with hard-to-reach people, including, like, for example, the president of the Arizona State University, because we were using video. And when he said, well, what are you planning to do? We could show them, here are other interviews that we've done before with other high-profile thought leaders. We're just trying to get, your thoughts captured here. You can use video in a lot of different ways to build those business-to-business relationships.
Now, I happen to be here in the Valley of the Sun. I think you're talking about Michael Crow, the
Yes.
president of ASU, and the technique that you use is a guerrilla marketing technique that I've been using since 2007. And the beauty of it is you're selling top down.
Yep.
So you get, because you're doing the interview, you get direct access to the primary decision maker. And while you're with the primary decision maker, you drop a seed about an opportunity. They've already witnessed the work and the quality. You give them a link back to the video before it goes live so they can make or recommend any changes, right? And now all of a sudden, you guys have developed a friendship. Is that how it works?
And it's not just with the decision maker, because it's also with the stable of gatekeepers around that decision maker who also want to vet that video. And then when they see it and they like it and it makes their boss look good, they tweet it, they share it with their communities, and all of a sudden, basically you've leveraged video into instead of the foot in the door and the hard sell or the cold sell or all the other techniques that drive salespeople crazy, it's like, this is a little more collaborative. It's a lot more interesting. And by the way, if you look for the interview with Michael Crow that I did, he had some really amazing stuff to say. He is a really interesting person.
Yeah, he's a really smart guy. You and I, it's funny. I mean, we haven't talked about that strategy, but it is a very effective one. I pulled one off last week. I'll share with you. We had that HubSpot campaign that generated $200,000 in new revenue really, really quickly for the company. And so I said to the team, let's create a testimonial video for HubSpot, and let's talk about the case study that we came up with. And we did the video. We have an in-house team here, so it didn't take us long, and pulled it together and then pushed it out socially and made sure we tagged HubSpot, and within a matter of minutes or hours, I got emails from HubSpot's marketing team. The next thing they did is they started sharing it. Just on Twitter alone, they sent it out to 440,000 social followers, which then throughout the weekend and including today, and this was on Friday, including today, was still getting shared by people that were learning about our services purely by creating a thank you video for them, for HubSpot. And that doesn't suck when the cost of that kind of marketing direct to other businesses would have been significant, and I was able to drastically decrease it and get them to do it for free.
Yeah. So again, the only limitation here is imagination. And by the way, that's cheap. Although sometimes it's hard to come by. But let's put it this way: it's a levels the playing field, because all of a sudden now it's your imagination that you're competing with the big guys. Using the resources at hand rather than I got a bigger TV budget than they do.
Right. And if history's any indicator, people make comments like rich gets richer, poor gets poorer, but in business, more often than not, it's the small guy that's outthinking the big guy, and that's how a company like Netflix came on board and kicked the snot out of Blockbuster, and how Kodak is off to the side, and and you don't see Kodak's name on this today, and it's because big businesses tend to miss the big transitions and stop thinking out of the box. A really great article that you wrote out of Real SEO that I thought was fascinating, and let's take a few moments. Let's talk about Facebook video views and posts and the damn lies, and the statistics about it. Facebook is claiming to surpass YouTube in the number of total views on desktops in the US, but this has something to do with autoplays and like a semantic trick, a turn on the words that you normally only hear from politics. Is that a good way of looking at it?
I think so, and since the election just ended yesterday, I think all of us had lots of real-life examples of the tricks in politics. But let me talk about this particular one, because if it was Facebook alone, that would be disturbing. But it was Facebook aided and abetted by ComScore. That makes it a little more, problematic. So let me explain what happened. ComScore reported that Facebook had passed YouTube in videos lately. And it's like, whoa, time out. If that's the case, man, I've got to migrate half of my business someplace else. And when you dug into it, the first caveat you discovered is it was only on desktops. They were not measuring on smartphones or tablets. And when you think about that, it was like, well, that's odd. Why would they report that kind of metric? Well, here's the hidden surprise. There are so many people who are disabling video in their smartphone because if it autoplays, it can chew up a lot of minutes, and your cell phone bill or your limits in terms of what you've signed up for can go through the roof. So all of a sudden, if you're not measuring the hottest device where most of the views are happening, and Facebook has even reported that over 60% of its ad revenue is now coming from mobile, and we're not counting that, then it's like, oh man, okay, so they're leading in left-handed views. The second bogus assumption here is that an autoplay view, I've scrolled past this video, it starts playing whether I want to watch it or not, is somehow or other magically equivalent to a video that I opt into view. I've chosen to watch this. Even if it came as a sort of a pre-roll before a YouTube video I wanted to watch, I have the skip it button, and I decided not to skip it and actually watch this commercial. And pardon me, that's the same as I scrolled by and all of a sudden it played a few views, and that's the same thing? I don't think so. So again, watch out. Some of the metrics that are being bandied about out there are using a funny definition of views. I think, frankly, it gets back to this whole question of what is a view, what is it worth, is that even the right metric anymore? And I think that then gets back to our conversation about watch time and engagement and relevance and resonance and, you know, all the other things that people should be looking at.
Now, for those of you who are following along with us, when Greg's talking about the autoplay videos, think about your device. Look, you'll see how this video is. That sucker just stopped. Oh, no, it isn't. Okay, so it's moving. It's from the Discovery Channel about the Gold Rush show, and they're giving you a little video that you should get and expect this week. But it's such an important point. Is this really as valuable of a view as somebody that actually initiated a click? And obviously the answer is no. If you're an advertiser and you had to determine between a autoplay with no audio or an actual user clicking it and getting the additional sense of being able to hear what's going on, you would say really one significantly more valuable than the other. But the only way that Facebook could make this claim was to distort the numbers, and that's often how the game's played in America.
Yep, and so just be careful. I'm not saying don't experiment on Facebook. You should. But at the end of the day, if you're an agency, the client is going to want to know, did we move the needle? And moving the needle isn't your view count. Moving the needle is, did we generate leads? Did we generate traffic? Did we generate sales? Did we do something that's going to pay the bills?
And you'll notice from the beginning of this Hangout on air that Greg and I are having in this week in video marketing, all these topics have kind of dovetailed perfectly into each other. I mean, if you think about it, if you don't have your reach, your resonance, and also your ability to be relevant, then the engagement isn't valuable. So all those elements need to be built in, and I just thought it was just beautiful how that all kind of worked out, so we could bring that to your attention. Now, there's another story we saw about digital transformation, and what has it got to do with online video? And digital transformation requires marketing executives to change virtually everything they learn from college and leverage YouTube for, maximum brand impact. So we're talking about like, traditionally there was gross rating points and things are different today. Greg, give us an idea of what people should know as a key takeaway from the article about the digital transformation taking place.
Sure. Well, first of all, let me share a personal story. My father was the director of marketing at Oldsmobile, and his big ad campaign during the 1980s was a campaign titled "It's Not Your Father's Oldsmobile." Now, ironically, it was my father's Oldsmobile, but we'll avoid all that. But the hidden story behind this anecdote is this: when he launched the campaign, Oldsmobile was selling close to 1 million cars a year. When he pulled the plug on the campaign 3 years later, Oldsmobile was down to half of that, only about 500,000 cars a year in terms of annual sales. And what the campaign had done was unsold 50% of their prospects over a 3-year period. And, that doesn't look good on anybody's resume. And my father basically turned to his ad agency, Leo Burnett, and said, "Excuse me, how are we measuring success?" And the agency, said, "Oh, gross rating points." And my dad said, "Okay, so how many GRPs do we need before we sell a car?" And the answer is there's no connection. Okay, so be careful what you're measuring. If you are measuring how much media you purchased, how many, reach and frequency, that's what basically a GRP is a measure of. The assumption is that somehow good stuff happens after that. Well, unfortunately, in my dad's case, that wasn't so. Now, this brings us into the digital transformation. None of us learned about YouTube when we went to college. We certainly didn't learn about it in our marketing course because guess what? Unless you're 23, YouTube didn't exist when you went to college, okay? And what that means is that most of what we learned about, quote, marketing, unquote, if you really go back and dig out that old marketing textbook, if you saved it, what you will discover is that what you were learning about is television and mass media and mass marketing, which had their heyday in the 1950s and 60s and 70s. That's why we all love to watch Mad Men, okay? But it's not that era anymore. We're in the 21st century now, and media works differently. And the best capture of that I've seen is an infographic that Google did called Flipping the Funnel. And in this infographic, they basically show that in the old model, the one that existed back when my father was director of marketing, back when those textbooks that we read in college were written, the old model was built on exposure or reach because you assumed everyone is a prospect. The more I can reach, the better things will trickle down, and some small percentage of them may actually turn into customers. Well, in this new social media world, flip the funnel. And all of a sudden, if you reach the right few people, and they get engaged, and they share it with the people who they influence, and they get engaged, and they then share it with the people that they know, their friends and colleagues and family, that's the whole concept of social video. Well, guess what? That is entirely upside down. But that's the new world we're living in. And until we figure that out, we're going to keep doing the wrong thing for the wrong paradigm because, well, that's what I learned in college.
Yeah, I think when I was on radio for Clear Channel, we were broadcasting, right, to the largest number of people possible. But success on the web is, as Greg said, it's flipped upside down. It's narrowcasting. It's to a very fine niche, and you're always going to be your best marketer when you're hitting a very specific target audience, and you can do that on the web with video better than anything else. To give you an example, in 2012, when my stepmom was diagnosed with breast cancer, I launched Breast Cancer Answers to help get the word out for women like her, and we generated 600 videos in year one. Now we're over 1,000 videos, And those 600 videos direct to patients end up generating 6.3 million video views to women 35 to 64 years of age. And because helpful is the new viral, and we narrowcasted properly, we ended up seeing, if you went into the YouTube analytics, that the audience was exactly what we were hoping to reach, 35, 64 years of age women, because they're the only people that would be interested in clicking on that content. They were self-vetting by being interested in that information. And that's really the power, one of the big powers of online marketing done well. Greg, we've covered a lot of territory. In closing, is there anything you'd like to leave the audience with today?
Well, I want to leave them with just sort of a counterintuitive anecdote. This is about a video that a little company in Utah created to reach an audience of one. Okay? The little company in question is called AuraBrush. They were trying to get their product, which is a tongue cleaner, stocked on the shelves of Walmart stores, 3,500 Walmart stores across the country. And they were just trying to get a sales call with the buyer down in Arkansas. And they created a video for one person, the buyer. And they put it up on YouTube and made it a private video so that only he, because he got the URL, could watch it. Well, interestingly enough, he not only watched it, he shared it because the video got more than one view. But nevertheless, what AuraBrush was hoping for was a phone call saying, okay, loved your video, why don't you come in and we'll have a meeting and we'll talk about this. They didn't get the meeting. It didn't happen. What they got instead was a fax. That's right, fax, F-A-X. It's hard to believe anyone uses that anymore. But they got a fax from the buyer saying, okay, can you ship 600,000 units to these 3,500 stores in August? A video created for one made the sale, got the order. So again, think about this narrowcasting, the power of flipping the funnel, the power of communicating to the right people, not necessarily lots of random people, and all of a sudden, wow, there's no stopping what you could do next.
I look at it, Greg, like A plus B equals C. C being conversion or sale, okay? Or cash even. Your story is a perfect example for that. When somebody looks at a product video, they process information 60,000 times faster than if they read text. You only have a very small limited window with your target customer, so do it very well and be succinct. That's your A, is how fast people process information. The B is we retain 68% from video and 11% from text. When you add those two up, A plus B, you get the sale, and the sale is when you add up video on a product page, 75% more likely to convert. Use video as a strategic tool to boost your business and to boost your revenue, and few explain it better than Greg just did. He's Greg Jarbo. He's president and co-founder of SEO PR, and for more information you can find him on the web at seo-pr.com. Thanks, Greg, so much for joining us.
Thank you, Todd. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, and well, that's this week in video marketing. Next week we're going to be talking about other great articles, most likely popping up inside of Real SEO, and feel free to ping me with any stories you'd like us to talk about right here on This Week in Video Marketing.